Here we are. We appreciate you joining us. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. Reese and I are together for the first time since we started this thing. I think we're about 30 episodes in, maybe 31 now that we have at least recorded. And we're both in Playa del Carmen. We're in this lovely Marriott lobby now. So Amanda, thanks for joining us today. We don't really have like a formal thing to get into. So I guess if you just want to give us a short background, like where are you at now, that type of deal.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys. Fun that we're all in Mexico as well. So I guess a little bit about me is that I am a registered yoga teacher. I'm actually not actively teaching yoga right now, but I am a yoga teacher. I'm a yoga business coach. I'm a newer author. I just wrote a book at the end of 2023. I am a kind of former digital nomad, more expat in these days since I'm mostly just living in Mexico. And I'd say, big passion for travel, so world traveler. So that kind of sums me up in just a couple of descriptive words.
What year did you start traveling? Like, how long did it take you to go from when you first wanted to get out there, hit the road, and travel around to when you got to the point where like, okay, maybe I need to settle down? Like, what was that whole arc like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So well, maybe not obviously. I traveled as a kid. My family traveled quite a bit. We usually took like one or two trips a year. I'm from Western Canada, so I'm from a very cold part of the world. So it's very common for many Canadian families to escape south in like this time of year, December, January, February, that type of thing. And so I got introduced to, different parts of the world. I went to Mexico for the first time. I think it was like 2000 or 2001. And I remember just thinking like, this is so cool. And this little girl in the pool, she must have been younger than me, maybe like 8 or 9. And remember, I'm like 11 or 12 at this point, so I'm young. And she was British. And she was like, you have the best accent I've ever heard. And I was like, what? I don't have an accent. You're the one with the accent. And it was like this whole, like, seeing different houses and how people live and hearing that apparently I have an accent, and just, it kind of sparked something in me where I was like, I just want more of this. But obviously I was school age and stuff. So, fast forward, I went through high school, I went to college, I graduated with a business degree, and my now husband, boyfriend at the time, and I decided to travel for 6 months before we settled down and got, like big kid jobs. And so we went through Western Europe, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, did a whole like around the world trip. And I just wanted more. Like we got back and we were like, how can we do this again? But obviously, we were on a backpacker's budget. So we got these big kid jobs and we worked those for a little bit, and it just was not a high point in life. And we were like, can we do this again? And so that first trip was in 2011. And in 2014, we decided to quit our jobs, sell our stuff, and go to South America. And so we did that for 6 months. And we came back from that trip. I turned 25 on that trip. So we came back and we were like, how can we do this more sustainably? Because the idea of like, being in Canada, working full-time jobs, saving all of our money so that we could go do these like 6-month trips just didn't feel sustainable going forwards. And so I think that's the point where I'd say I took like my career U-turn and sort of decided like, okay, let's do something else. And so we spent the next couple of years just working jobs that like paid the bills so we could do things that we wanted to do on the side. And that's when we started our travel podcast and just started like dabbling in, could I do this online? What are other people doing? Could we run a travel blog? How are people making money and also traveling? And there wasn't a ton of people doing it like the way that people are now, and especially post pandemic. And so we were just drawing from what we could learn. And in 2016, we finally had enough like pieces of the puzzle together to go out on our nomad journey. And we were both just freelancing a couple of gigs. We were making, like $1,000 or $2,000 a month. So we're still on like a pretty tight budget and trying to figure out like the balance of the hustle while also, exploring places and stuff like that. And then from 2016 on, just started, I guess, like slowing down our travels after the first sort of year of doing that and trying to figure out like, okay, where do we really want to be? What do we really want to do? That's when I really leaned into building out my yoga business. I'd been trying to figure out how do I balance being a yoga teacher with traveling the world. And I felt like there was a lot of demand at that time, and there still is in the yoga industry, for people trying to figure out how to make careers out of yoga. And my background was in business, and I also had a podcast, which was not super common at that time. So I was like, why don't I create a podcast on this, and I can interview people who are ahead of me, who have these successful careers, share it with people behind me, also learn myself, and teach people who are coming into the industry as new yoga teachers. And so that was early 2016 that I launched that. And I guess it's been like 8 years that I've been working away at that business. And then, yeah, obviously pandemic happened. That slowed us down quite a bit. I'm sure you guys know. And it just kind of changed things. And then we had a baby in early 2022. She's almost 2 now. So we were like, oh, well, we really need to slow down because I actually need to give birth somewhere. So we've landed in Mexico. We've been here, pretty full time for the last, I guess you could say since like the end of 2020. So I guess it's been like 3 years that we've been kind of full time in Mexico. And it's been really great. Hopefully at some point we can go back to kind of more nomad life, but I'm enjoying this chapter as well. So that's a long answer to that question.
That was incredibly detailed. I mean, there's like 4 different points. I was like, okay, I want to ask about this. And now they've all gone. No, I'm joking. I've got the first one I want to go back to, if we can, is it was so nice the way you described that experience by the pool. And that was your first, like, ooh, there's more to what I've already experienced in life. So young, really cool. And then you explain how you kind of got going, and then you were like, cool, how do we do more? What was the more? Like, was it just seeing places? Was it because obviously you were doing it together as well. Like, what was the thing that you were kind of craving each time?
Like when we were just traveling, or when we started as nomads? Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like there's something about traveling, especially when you're not working, but just traveling, that gives you this like sense of freedom that I feel like is really hard to get when you're just maybe in the place that you grew up, or you're just at home kind of doing like the day-to-day grind. And I felt like when I was back in Canada, I was really craving that freedom, this like sense of ease, this sense of exploration, this sense of adventure, like just wanting to be able to have something that was a bit more interesting. And, it's interesting because as we've slowed down quite a bit, I've found that I can still get that. Like it's fun being in a country that's not, my native tongue, or my, the food I grew up with. Because it's like when we leave the house, it's like, and especially you guys are in Mexico, so it's like when we leave, there's always something happening. Like Mexico is a country full of, beauty and parties and chaos. So it's like we've always been able to, even if we're working full time, leave the co-working space, leave the apartment, leave the house where we're in, and find this kind of little taste of adventure. And I feel like that was a big thing for me, is I just wanted more of that. I just felt like, I guess maybe my life was a little mundane when I was just going through the like hamster wheel of working full time, living in Calgary.
That's what, well, my next question was going to be what part of Canada. And it's funny, you were kind when you said, so I'm from northern Minnesota. So it was kind when you said it's not that interesting at home. I was going to say it's boring at home, and it's tough because, and we talk about this a lot where, and it's, of course, that's the lifestyle, that's the way people are, but it's hard when you travel to go back. And people love hearing the stories, and they appreciate what you're doing, but whether they get it or not, they're in their mode. Like, this is my trajectory. This is what I have to do. Like, my kids have to go to the same high school I did. Whatever course they take. And Reese and I both experienced, and it sounds like you did too, where we both went back to our homes for a little bit, and it started to get a little like I felt very, I don't want to say foreign there, but it just felt weird. I wasn't around like-minded people. We actually started second guessing what we were doing, because you hear it enough times from everybody around you, that like when are you going to like settle down or whatever. I'm like, am I supposed to do that? So it definitely isn't super healthy to be in a place like that for a long time, especially if this is what you want to do. So it's good that you got back out again. And I appreciate what you said about, because my next question was going to be, what has it been like since you've settled? But it sounds like you still get a little bit of that, excitement and like new experiences, because like you said, you're in a foreign country. There's always something going on down here. It's warm all year round. So just like I grew up, it was cold 9 months out of the year. So you're just kind of in
Yeah,
the house.
same.
And so at least here, even when it's terrible outside or when it's stormy, you can still walk outside. It's not that big of a deal. So, but
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in a colder part of Mexico than you guys are. We do
mm,
actually get 4 seasons here, and there's no heating or air conditioning in like the houses. We live in like an older kind of Mexican style house. And so December this year was actually like quite chilly. I was like, oh, I think I'm getting weak. Um, but no, just to your points, I feel like one thing about home is that as I've ventured further from home and spent less time at home, there's things that I've really appreciated. And, I'm from a beautiful part of the world, from like the Canadian Rockies. I live very close to Banff National Park, which is something that's on many, many people's bucket list. So I don't take that for granted. And there's things that I do love about there that I crave, especially living in Mexico, fresh air, fresh water, like the nature is so pristine. Yet it's so interesting to kind of like see the shifts as you spend more time out of your home country, because it's you go back, like you were saying, and it's like it almost becomes a little foreign to you. Like it's so normal to you because it's like how you grew up, it's what you know, but it also becomes a little bit of that like reverse culture shock a little bit. And I think I've felt that especially too. Like we had our daughter in Mexico. So my entire experience of being a parent has been not in Canada. So people ask me questions about, oh, what do you do for this in Canada? I'm like, I have no idea. I've never parented a child in Canada. I've been back only a couple months of the year. But then also to your comment about settling, I think we've really tried to like keep adventure, like keep kind of adventure alive, even though we're more like, I guess, expats than nomads these days. And part of the reason we decided to come to Mexico in those early days of the pandemic was because Mexico is such a diverse country. So we didn't just pick one place to live in. We kind of bumped around a little bit. Like we were in Puerto Vallarta for a couple months, and then we were in Mexico City, and then we were in Merida for a couple of months, went back to Mexico City, went back to PV. We were kind of jumping like coast to coast a little bit. We had tons of friends that were in Mexico as well, kind of not able to go other places. And we were just kind of going to the cities where we had community, which was really fun. And then taking other little trips to explore places we'd never been. And that kind of kept a little bit, like it's not new countries, but it's like it keeps a little bit of that adventure alive. And then last year, if you don't have kids, maybe you don't know, but it's like you have to start paying for an airline seat when your child turns 2. So, the first year of parenting was pretty intense. We basically we did a big trip back to Canada, which included mostly driving. So we drove mostly from Mexico to Canada with a 5-month-old.
Wow.
Yeah, which is crazy. We had to get our car out of Mexico. We had a foreign car in Mexico. And so we had to get it out of Mexico. We sold it and then flew back so we could buy one here, because you can't be a permanent resident in Mexico with a foreign car. So that's why we did that. And then at the beginning of 2023, we were like, okay, her birthday is in February. So we were like, we have basically 13 months before we have to pay for an airline ticket. We're feeling more like grounded in parenthood. Like, what are we doing this year? And so we spent I think 4.5 months outside of Mexico last year traveling with our daughter, while also working. And we went to I think we traveled within 8 countries. So we kind of were like, okay, we're finding sort of like a little groove of doing this a little bit where we keep our home base. We kept our lease here. We kept all of our stuff here because children have a ton of things. But then we also got these kind of 3-week to 5-week long trips. So we got that sense of sort of nomad life, I guess, a little bit again.
That's awesome to hear. What and what's your child called?
Her name's Louise. We call her Lou.
Lou. Awesome. Because I'm fascinated by families who travel.
Mm-hmm.
What's the experience been like for Lou and for yourselves with Lou, as in specifically, with a child?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been really great. I think you hear a lot of people saying oh, it's terrible. Traveling with kids is awful. Or they're stressed about it, so they don't do it. And I certainly get that. We kind of felt that, but we were also we love to travel. This is one of our biggest passions. So we need to get her kind of accustomed to it as soon as possible. And it's really cool because, like I said, she's, just a little bit under 2. Her birthday is next weekend. So she'll be 2 soon. Next weekend at the time of recording, probably 2 by the time this comes out. And so she's already like used to, like, she understands that she has to put like her little stuffed animal in the tray when we go through security, and that, she has to get out of her stroller and like take her jacket off. Like she doesn't necessarily like it, but who likes that? But she does really great with it. And she, loves to like run towards the plane and get on the plane and look out the window and stuff like that. So I feel like we've done like a pretty good job at getting her accustomed to those things. But she's been amazing. Like, we were kind of open to the fact that, okay, we're choosing to bring a child into the world. Like, if this doesn't work for her or she doesn't like it, then we're going to have to make adjustments. And we were just like, okay, let's give it a shot. And honestly, traveling when they're really, really little is pretty easy because they sleep a lot and, they don't have big opinions about things. I think it gets a little harder as they get bigger. And I'm sure there's plenty that I have not yet experienced because she's still so small. But so far, it's just been really cool to see like her experience the world and see her try new foods. Like, we went to Japan in April and she tried every single thing we put in front of her. Like, girlfriend loves some ramen. Like, she just like takes it, sticks it in her mouth, slurps it up. It's like the coolest thing to watch. So I don't know. I think it's just been a really like positive, great experience for us. And it's been, yeah, truly amazing to just watch her kind of explore other places and wave at people that she doesn't know and see them engage with her and stuff like that.
Seems like most, I mean, this is kind of an extreme example, but like most children that are well traveled when they're young turn out to be pretty well adjusted. Like they seem to
Yeah.
do like exceed. Maybe it's just they're used to like they're out of their comfort zone all the time, which is really what kids these days need, because of
Mm-hmm.
the way everybody's just kind of like in their own little bubble these days. What so what made you decide on the area that you're in now? Like what made you decide like, hey, this is going to be our home base for a while?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we came to visit the city, which is called Querétaro. It's in central Mexico, like 3 hours kind of northwest of Mexico City, an hour from San Miguel de Allende. If you were to take a bus between the two, you'd pass through where I live. We came here to visit a friend in like late 2020. We were heading to Mexico City. And so we were like, oh, it's only 3 hours. Why don't we just go see her? We hadn't seen her for a while. Kind of pandemic days. So obviously just being able to see, people in our Nomad community was something that was really important to us. She'd been based here for a couple of months and we came just for a week. And I was like, the city was not on my radar at all. It's not super, super common with tourists, but it's a decent size. It's like 1.5 to 2 million people. It's got like everything you need. It's close to Mexico City, but it's like way more chill than Mexico City. We like cities where people don't always just speak English to us because then we get to practice Spanish. So we felt like, we don't stand out as expats. People just like, or as foreigners, people just treat us kind of normal. Climate is great here. And we noticed all of that just like in a week. And so we were kind of like, okay, like put it in the back of our minds as like, maybe this is somewhere we could come back to. And then fast forward to spring of 2021, I found out that I was pregnant and we were like, okay, well, we need to decide where we're going to have this baby because, we can jump around for a certain amount of weeks, but at some point we're going to have to stop traveling and I'm going to have this baby somewhere. And so we kind of went back and forth. Do we want to have the baby in Mexico? Do we want to go back to Canada? What do we want to do? And I just started looking up options for midwives and birthing centers. I really wanted to do a more like, I guess, natural birth. I wanted to ideally birth outside of the medical system if it was safe for me to do so, which is really uncommon in Mexico. And I came across this midwife who had a ton of experience. She had a great website, great social media page, and she was based here. And so I reached out to her and set up a consultation and flew from Puerto Vallarta to Querétaro. And she's like, I don't deliver babies in PV. And I was like, no, that's fine. Like, we'll move here. And I feel like it must have been such an odd experience because not everyone has that flexibility. But basically, we went back to Canada for a number of months. We drove our Canadian car down to Mexico so we'd have a car when the baby was born. And we got an Airbnb for 7 months. And that kind of encompassed my last trimester. And then we thought, okay, we'll stay for at least, 3-4 months while the baby's young so we can kind of get adjusted. And then we'll just see. we didn't really have a plan. And we just really liked it here. So we ended up signing a lease on a house, which we've since renewed. It was really scary. We were like, can we just sign for 6 months? Like, I don't know if we want to stay this long, but it's actually been really, really great in this chapter of life to just settle a little bit and slow down a little bit and do our travels in a bit of a different way. So that's kind of how we ended up here. It's a little bit random, but I feel like when you are nomadic, like we had no home. It's like we can literally go anywhere. So where do we want to go? And, Mexico City and Merida were both on our list as well, but Merida's so hot. I was like, I do not want to be pregnant in Merida. And Mexico City just felt so overwhelming. Like, if I have to get to a hospital, could it take me it could take like 2 hours in traffic. Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. It just felt like a really overwhelming place to be with a small infant. And so, yeah, we landed here. Kind of random, I know.
No, hey, that's the lifestyle. It's random is the name of the game, right? Which was my next point was going to be for anybody who's traveling or like couples that are thinking about having a child abroad. I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds. Obviously, Reese and I are both here now. We see there's brand new hospitals and everything around because people get images in their minds about what living in another country and having a child were. How have you found? I mean, aside from the setup you had with the midwife and all that, how have you found the services and everything else as far as childcare goes?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. Like, I think when people think Mexico, they think like, oh, it must be, slow and dirty and, not good and stuff like that. But it's not the case. The private system in Mexico is amazing. It's incredible. And it's very, very, very affordable. We've had an incredible experience, everything from I'm pregnant with our second baby right now, who's due at the beginning of June. And, it's like I've had incredible experiences with ultrasounds and, we've had to use emergency rooms and stuff like that. So, not for my daughter or for myself, thankfully my husband had like a minor emergency earlier this year and we went and he was, checked in a CAT scan in 15 minutes. Like, amazing service. We have a pediatrician that we have on WhatsApp. Like, if my daughter's sick, we can send her a message, and even on like Saturdays and Sundays, she responds within an hour to us. Like, it's really, really incredible. I think that people have this idea of that it's not going to be good, and especially being Canadian, it's like, oh well, you can get this free healthcare, and I'm like, all my friends in Canada, none of them have pediatricians.
Yeah,
nobody has a
Too,
pediatrician,
right? Don't you have to get on a wait list
our
for certain
doctor's
things?
office in Canada shut down earlier this year. Like, we don't even have doctors in Canada anymore. And you need a specialist. You just find somebody at the hospital, you call them, you book an appointment, or you book it via WhatsApp. And, it's probably going to cost you under $100 to see somebody who's super, super specialized. You don't have to go through like a GP to get a recommendation and then wait 6 months to see somebody. You just get your healthcare covered. Yeah. So my experience has been extremely positive here. I would very much recommend healthcare in Mexico. It's been awesome.
That's good to hear because I know like in the US, I had really good insurance and it's still like, because our system's all messed up anyway, but it's like, go to the emergency room, that'll be 10 grand. And then they're like, but if you need an ambulance, it's like 15,000 for the ambulance ride. And most of that's covered by insurance. But I know people that have like fallen and hurt themselves. They're like, don't call the fucking ambulance. I'll drive myself, because they don't want to pay for the ambulance ride. So yeah, no, that's good to hear. And it's a testament to the system if you're, planning on, obviously you're having another child. So that's all we need to know. That's all anybody who's listening needs to know that you're happy to have another baby in the same spot. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. My husband actually we were in the US in 2015, 2016. He had a job there and he had to get an emergency appendectomy. And I mean, thank God we had travel insurance because I think that cost over like 40,000 USD to get that. But just the whole experience for how much it cost was just not a great experience. And the whole time he's like, is my insurance covering this? Is my insurance covering this? And they just kept like, scanning things and moving him along and stuff. And we were like, this better be covered because I don't think we can afford this otherwise. But thank God everything was covered. But yeah, it's really crazy. I feel like there's a lot of corruption and just brokenness in so many systems. And I'm sure there's many arguments to be made about that in the Mexican system as well. But I think, my experience with the private system specifically here, and even we've had to use the public system. One time my husband got stung by a scorpion in 2022. apparently he has like all the drama. If you guys need an episode on like medical situations, you can interview him. But there was no private clinics open, and we even had a pretty good experience there as well. And that was covered through our residency and stuff. So yeah, good experiences all around here for what we've had to do.
That's amazing. I mean, honestly, it's crazy to hear. You've obviously had Blue, you've got another one on the way, but then there's a book, there's the podcast, there's the appearances. You've got like, how are you juggling this? Because I'm sure there's some people listening, like there's a mix of people listening that are like very far away from that world, but there hopefully over time there's going to be more and more people that maybe can resonate, or like they have that in their future vision, but they're like, how the hell am I going to do that? Travel, build businesses, etc. Like, what's the whole experience been like as a juggler?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride and a lot of like figuring things out. I guess the end of 2019, I was at a place with my business where I was like, you know what, I think I could bring somebody on super part-time to help me out with some of my lower level tasks. And so I brought a virtual assistant on, and she's been working with me ever since. She started around maybe 5 hours a week, and now she's probably a little closer to 10. We don't have kind of a strict cutoff. It's just like she does the work that I ask her to do. But she's been like an angel sent from the heavens. She's helped me so much. And, you know, I took some time off when Lou was born. So I took a maternity leave, and I was able to kind of keep my business going on the outside, like keep podcast episodes going and all that type of thing, because I had somebody that I trusted. I had, you know, a producer I trusted, and ultimately my assistant who I trusted. So having like people support my business, I wouldn't say I have like a big team or anything. I just have her, and then, you know, somebody who does contract podcast production for me. But just having even that help is huge. So having help is one of the key pieces. And then within the house, once I did go back to work, we hired a part-time nanny. So I started with just 10 hours a week of nanny care for my daughter. So somebody who could, you know, help me so I could schedule my calls on those 2 days that I had her in those hours. And then I've done a lot of work in nap times over the last 2 years. So naps and after bed, and, you know, when my husband's off work and stuff like that, just kind of, you know, making that work. And then just, I guess when she turned 18 months, so almost 6 months ago, we brought on a nanny 4 mornings a week. And that's been like amazing. So now I have like 16 hours of childcare a week, which allows me to do work on like a more part-time basis. But I think the biggest thing is like having my own business and having myself set up has allowed me to be really flexible with things. It allows me to like control how many calls I take and what I say yes to and what I say no to. Obviously it also, you know, I can just kind of figure out how much like income I need to bring in to support our family. And I am in a partnership, and my husband has a full-time job. So we're able to kind of balance in that way as well. But I think that being in Mexico, being able to afford like help in our home has been like a huge, huge blessing. You know, we have somebody who comes and cleans twice a week. So that takes that off my plate, or off our plate rather. Although traditionally that'd be like the stay-at-home mom, right? Like doing all the laundry and all the dishes and all the cooking and stuff like that. So I feel like having somebody to help both with my child and both with my house has been allowed me to do things like write a book. Like people are like, how on earth did you write a book when you have, you know, I released it right after she turned 18 months, and people are like, how did you do this? And I was like, 1, I've been working on this for like 6 years. 2, I had help. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's good to hear when like I'm a huge proponent of, if there's something that, look, I could do my own laundry, I could clean, I could do these things, I just don't want to. And even on days where I have nothing else to do, I still don't want to do, you know. So I'm a huge proponent of when it can be afforded, you know, like just give it to somebody else. Like, what are you doing? You know, because there's so many people that still hold on to that, like, oh, I don't want to pay X amount of dollars for this or that, to have somebody do, like, you know, you're not. That's, if you think about the grand scheme of life, like, I would pay a lot of money to not have to do a lot of things. Like, I don't even want to have to walk from here to my apartment. If somebody would carry me, I'd pay him to do that, So, but it's good
How
to
much
hear.
are
I
we
Like,
mean,
talking?
you're in Mexico. You can
yeah,
certainly find somebody to do
yeah.
that for the right price.
I'm kind of heavy though. I'm just probably throw your back up, but yeah, no, it's like I agree. Like on the business side of things, like being able to let go of tasks to a VA and using them however much you want to, and then having people around the house. I also think, and my son's 22 now, but I also think that like when I was very young when I had him, but like I think that if we had help, like back then, I think I would have enjoyed the time with him more because it wasn't
Mhm.
just me all the time or her all the time. So yeah, no, I love that. And so you were working on the book for 6 years. So did you? Because I'm having the same experience. I'm writing fiction, and I've been doing it for about 12 years, working on the same stupid thing. And what I
Yeah.
found is I did it in spurts,
You've
and I was
never
just
told me that.
yeah. Well, I try not to
Well,
say
yeah.
anything because now it's going to be now it's going to be a deadline. But yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah. And yeah.
I've been working on it for a long time. But I did it in spurts. Like when you first of all, how did you have the idea to want to write, and then when you sat down, was it something like I'm going to outline this thing, or is it just something that like you've been jumping back into? Like how's that played out over the last 6 years?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So when we first moved to Mexico City, it was like 2000, fall of 2017. And I think Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss was like relatively new. It was gaining a lot of traction. And my husband was like, you should do this for MBO, for my yoga business. And I was like, yeah, not Tim Ferriss over here. That's really funny that you think that I could do that. But yeah, definitely not anywhere close to the level of Tim Ferriss. And he was like, well, it doesn't really matter. You could just take your podcast episodes and create these kind of like, mini, like basically mini resources for them. And then people who prefer to read rather than listen have access to that too. I kind of thought about it for a little bit and I was like, oh, that's actually like a really cool idea. Like maybe I could do that. And so I started just from the beginning of my podcast. At that point, I'd only been podcasting with that podcast for less than a year. So I guess I had, maybe 50 episodes, maybe less than that. I was just getting started. So it felt really manageable. So I started re-listening to them, making notes, outlining like the business lessons that were in them, kind of making them into these little like digestible sections. And, I must have maybe gone through 5 to 10 of them. And then life happened. I got busy. I just put it aside. I didn't touch it till 2020. So I did almost nothing for like 2 years. I was really like, bringing on a lot more coaching clients and working with some studios. And life was pretty busy. And so I was also traveling a ton. And so in 2020 pandemic hit, I had that assistant working for me. She's an amazing writer. She's actually about to release her first fiction book, which she's also been working on for like 12 years.
Maybe I need to get her information after we're done with this call, so somebody can push
Yeah,
me along.
she's awesome. And
Yeah.
we just had a call and I was like, hey, I could really use your help. Like if I can give you the episodes, can you start listening to them and making the points and kind of writing these overviews? And then I can go back through them after, like take kind of the heavy lifting off my plate. Cause the actual listening of the episodes to actually pull the content was like the thing that took the longest, because all the episodes are like an hour each. And it's going to take you probably 2 hours to actually do that work. And she was like, yep, cool. I can start working on that. And so we just slowly started putzing along on it. And then obviously pregnancy, baby, postpartum, mat leave, all that happened. She was kind of a little bit dependent on me to be doing work and I wasn't doing a lot at that point. And so we had a little bit of a pause. And then about a year ago, I said, hey, do you think we could get this done in the next year? Like if we just really, like if I actually do the work that you need me to do, because she was doing everything that she needed to do. It was just me who was like kind of sitting on it as a back burner project. And she's like, I think we can totally do it. So we outlined a plan. We figured out the rest of the episodes. Because at this point, the problem I was having was that like I had so many more episodes because I'd kept producing and I was like, I can't do them all. So now I need to pick and choose. And I need to choose strategically because like the pandemic happened, things have shifted, the yoga industry's changed a lot. What's going to actually be kind of evergreen and relevant content for people? And so there was quite a bit of like thoughtful processing for how I actually wanted to structure the book and what episodes I wanted to include, et cetera, et cetera. And so we just started like working through that. And basically I was just having to put it in my calendar, schedule it, and just sit down and actually do the work. And then, yeah, as it got closer, I was like, okay, I need to hire an editor now, and I need to figure out somebody who can create the cover for the book and somebody who can format it for me. And so I happened to know an editor in the city that I lived in. So I approached her. She was happy to edit it. So that was great. Sent it off to her once it was kind of ready to go. Found other people on Fiverr to do the other work. And then it kind of just all came together. And it's funny, Lee, that you said that you haven't mentioned this book, because I like put it out there that I released a book, and like my mom's like, what, wait, what? You've been working on this? And I hadn't told anyone, because I never was like truly confident that it would see the light of day, because it felt like this project that just maybe
It's
I'll
weird,
never
isn't it?
actually do that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
totally.
weird. Yeah, I was thinking about when you were just telling me how your process. I was like, man, she was doing all this before you could just put an episode through transcription. Now I can, like when we're done
I
here with
know,
the
like with
yeah
AI technology now, I could have obviously
yeah
saved like a ton of time and a ton of money and stuff. So, I mean, it's a great time for anyone who maybe has a podcast or an idea like this, like use AI for sure. There's so much great technology. But yeah, back in late 2017, early 2018, it was like popping on my headphones and listening to myself talk for an hour, which is grueling in and of
yeah.
itself.
They say it's one of the hardest things to do is finish any type of book because, well, first of all, there's no guarantee that anybody's going to read or like it anyway. That's just the way it is. Like unless you're like
Mhm.
an author that's had a series, like people are going to pre-order your book, but most people who write, there's no guarantee of it. So the time commitment, like I want to work on this thing for years, and then I guess just me and my mom are going to read it if I even tell my mom that I wrote it. You know what I mean? So it's like
Totally.
that's an exercise in extreme discipline for sure. So when you like with the yoga thing now, because you said you went to school for business, and
Mhm.
then were you just doing yoga as kind of like just something that you did as a hobby, then decided to start teaching it? Like how did that come about? Because I know you kind of looked at different things you could do remotely. Was that because of the digital nomad idea, or was it something that you figured like I know how to do this well, I should start teaching it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was kind of before, I guess, the idea of like working and traveling kind of came into play. I did yoga for the first time when I was still in high school, so I was young, and then practiced a little bit throughout college. And then when I was working full time, kind of in between those two trips I told you guys about in the very beginning, I started practicing quite a bit. It was like, I had like a busy corporate job that I didn't totally love, and I wasn't like in love with the stage of life I was in and what I was doing. And I felt like going to yoga was like this 1 hour of my day that I got that was just like me, myself, and I got to be quiet. I got to go inwards. And the more I practiced, the more I was like, maybe teaching this would be something that would be cool for me. But my practice felt like I felt like not ready. Like I was like, I don't think I'm good enough at this, blah, 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 all these things. And then when I did that career U-turn in 2014, I started working at Lululemon. So that was what I decided to do. I was working in retail, and I ended up getting a part-time job at a local yoga studio, just doing like management, admin work, some of their emails, like any tasks they kind of needed on the side. And one of the things about Lululemon is that they get you to do goal setting. So it's part of working there, even when you're like a lowly minimum wage employee, everyone does goal setting. So for 1 year, I think like 5 years and 10 years. And I put it on my 5 year goals to do a 200-hour yoga teacher training program. And my manager was like, why do you want to do this in 5 years and not now? And I was like, well, I'm not ready. I'm not good enough, all these things. And she's like, I think you should do it now. She's like, I'll give you a month off. I'll hold your job. She's like, go do a teacher training somewhere. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was kind of interesting because when I'd quit my full-time job, I'd been working for a university, and they do like I don't know, it was like part of my paychecks had like gone towards the saving plan that they contribute to as well. And then when I quit my job, it got like paid out to me. And so I had taken that and just like put it in savings. And it was almost exactly what I needed to take a trip to Bali to do a yoga teacher training. And so between, this retail manager being like, go do this, like, here's the time off, which like, when does that ever happen? And having almost exactly what I need for the trip, I kind of was like, okay, maybe this is a sign that I should just do it. So in the spring of 2015, I went to Bali and did my first teacher training, and then kind of just figured out like how to be a yoga teacher from there.
It's always surprising to like, we all have like impressions of big brands and big business, and it's really nice to hear like a little story like that. it just reminds you that no matter how big a brand is, like at the end of the day, it's full of people. And it's really nice that that person was like looking out for you and kind of pushed you, gave you a little nudge, at least in that direction. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's interestingly, have you kept in touch with that person? Do they know like what you've built since doing that?
Yeah, like we're still like connected on Instagram and stuff like that. And I've seen her, since I've left the company and since she actually moved from that town, moved to Vancouver area and became like a regional manager and stuff. So I've seen her, off and on over the years and stuff. So it's been cool to both watch her journey and I think probably to watch my journey as well, because so much of that like moment was very like pivotal for me
Yeah,
in my journey.
I was going to say it's remarkable that how many of our stories start like that. Just one random thing that one person said, because everybody's expecting some big lead in, like I've been wanting to do this since I was, whatever. No, I was just like I was at a bar one day and somebody said you should do this, or and then it ends up playing itself out. So that's awesome. Like I was making to
Yeah.
your point before about Tim Ferriss. I was going to say Tim Ferriss wasn't Tim Ferriss until he was Tim Ferriss. So
Yeah, no, this
because
is
he
true.
probably would say the same thing. I listened to him recently. He's like, most of the shit he did in the beginning was a flop. So anyway, just plug it along. That's one of the things I was kind of curious about because obviously, especially people who travel a lot like we all do, everywhere you go, there's always, there's the yoga crowd, there's the weird drum circle beach crowd, there's the mushroom crowd, there's the EDM crowd, everybody has, even within the travel community, everybody's got their own thing. And I've noticed, it seems to me that the yoga space could be saturated, but I'm also not so sure about that because I also know that people are very particular about their teachers and like maybe like they go to one instructor that they just it just doesn't work out with. Like how's your experience been with that? Like finding students in certain places or just interacting with other teachers? Is it like a competitive thing or do you just find that people just kind of gravitate towards a particular teacher? Like let's say there's 10 of you in one city. I wonder how people just kind of find the person that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question. So I feel like my kind of philosophy on this is that the yoga market won't be like fully saturated until all like almost 8 billion people on the planet are practicing yoga regularly, which we're
Love
very
it.
far away from that. So I think there's really room for everyone within the industry. I think that with like most industries, honestly, I think sometimes we create the idea of saturation or like there isn't space for me and I don't know, maybe that's our human way of playing small a little bit. But I do think that it's important to remember that, like, yeah, not everyone is going to be for everyone. Like you said, like, I'm sure we've all gone to maybe a yoga class or a fitness class where it's like you just don't vibe with the person or you don't like what they taught or you don't like what they offered. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just great to find somebody else that you do vibe with. And that person exists out there. It's just a matter of finding them. And so I think that can be hard, especially when you're a new yoga teacher. Like having somebody get out and walk out of your class is like a hit to your ego where you wonder, what have I done? How can I be different? And it's like, we just wish them well on their journey. Like I'm not for them, but maybe there's another teacher that I could recommend to them that is for them. And that's okay. The other thing is for me, I'm a big fan of like collaboration over competition. Like I think there's space for all of us to share our unique goodness with the world. And again, I think that goes for anything we're doing. Like we could argue that podcasting is saturated, but I think there's space for all of our shows, right? There's space for all of us in there, space for all of our voices. Because even if we talk to the same person or about the same thing, it's going to be different because we're different. So I think that just remembering that and then, you know, yeah, collaborating with people versus like trying to compete with them. I just think competition can get really like ugly and yucky and we shouldn't work with people we don't want to work with. Of course, I'm not saying that, but I think that looking at like, hey, we're interested in something similar. Like, is there a way that we can support our students, our audiences, you know, through the things that we're doing rather than just being like, oh, you're kind of doing something similar to me. Therefore, like, I want nothing to do with you because you're going to steal my people. I just feel like for me, it's just not how I like to live my life. And I just think that that's not really what's necessary. Cause like I said, I think there's space for all of us.
Yeah. And the word gets out too, like in the community, if somebody's not pleasant, the word spreads amongst the teachers and everything else, I'm sure. So like any other job,
Totally. Yeah.
like, hey, that guy's an asshole over there. Don't, because you may have a big class scheduled, and maybe you fall ill or something and you need somebody to cover your class. So you want to know those people and trust them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Like if you have something that you can't support your student with, it's great to have somebody in your network that you can send them to. And if you're the type of person who doesn't want to talk to anyone else, how is anyone supposed to support you with your business if you don't support them? So I think that having that reciprocity and just having that, collaboration is really great.
well, we hit on a lot of things, so I don't want to ask too many questions here at the end, but I suppose if you had any advice for somebody, I know you do many things, but if you had advice for somebody who is actively practicing yoga and was thinking about becoming a teacher, would you recommend the route that you took? Any thoughts on how you might do it different, or was the trip to Bali, was that like what you needed to get started?
So I feel like there's a lot of teacher training programs and a lot of different like ways that you can do training. So you can do like the kind of condensed version that I did, or you can do kind of hybrids between in-person and online, find something more local that runs on weekends. I think the biggest thing is just finding something that works with that whatever chapter of life you're in. I feel really grateful that I got to do that. And I think especially now that I've got, a little one and stuff like that, going to Bali for 30 days by myself is just not feasible in this current chapter of life. So I think that, there's various programs that exist to meet various people in various chapters, like moms or single parents or people who are working full time who can't step away from their jobs. So while I loved the journey I had, I think just finding something that works with your schedule is great. But I would say just jump into it. Don't be worried about there being too many yoga teachers, because like I said, I don't think there are too many yoga teachers out there. I think there's lots of space for all of us. And I think that one of the things I've learned throughout the last, I guess, decade of my life has just been like good things will come when you follow the things you're interested in. I had no idea what I was going to do with a 200-hour yoga certificate, and like look where I am now. Like I never could have predicted this. And even I was talking to my husband the other day, because it's been 10 years since we took that like career U-turn backpacking trip to South America. And I was like, what if somebody would have told you like 10 years ago that we would be like married, have a toddler, a second baby on the way, living full-time in Mexico? Like, what would you have told them? He's like, I probably wouldn't have predicted a lot of it. So
It's an amazing story, honestly. Thank you for sharing it. And I mean, yeah, the upcoming happy birthday to Lou for next weekend.
thank you.
Obviously, I was going to say what's the biggest thing this year, but I think we know probably the biggest thing this year, upcoming in June. Any closing thoughts you wanted to share?
No, just I think for anyone who's listening, whatever you're excited about, whatever like kind of that thing is that you've been really wanting to do, I would just encourage you to do it. Sometimes it feels scary and sometimes it's hard, but just go for it. I feel like that's another thing I've learned is just go for it. If you want to become a digital nomad, go for it. If you want to quit your job, go for it. If you want to write a book, go for it. Just do the things you're excited about and good things will come.
Yep.
Amazing.
The
That's such a
world,
short-worthy clip at the end. I know that's hopefully that'll go viral.
yeah, no, we love that message. We tell people all the time, look, the world will be waiting for you when you come back. If you want to go try to travel the world and you hate it after 6 months, guess what? Your stupid little town's going to be there when you come home. So
Totally. Yeah. Or like if you want to work for yourself, go try it. There's going to be a full-time job available for you if it doesn't work out. So
yeah.
I think that life is short, and like you should just do the things that you're really excited about to the best of your capacity and how you can make it work given your like life situation and stuff like that. But yeah, I think sometimes people get so caught up in like the how and the logistics and like, do I have to be a nomad forever? Do I have to teach yoga forever? Do I have to do this thing forever? And it's like, you can just do it until you don't want to do it anymore. And then you figure out the next thing.
Well, like I said, we haven't figured out how to end one of these yet, so I'm probably just gonna get up and walk away, figure something out. But we appreciate you coming on. It was very nice meeting you, and thanks for having some patience with us with our technical difficulties as we're trying to work this Marriott situation out. And we wanted to have this elaborate setup where we have like a camera where you could see both of us. We looked like we were professionals, and instead we're like, hanging out. We're squatting in the Marriott. We're not even staying here. We're like squatting here, like using their free Wi-Fi. So we have to keep
Hey,
ordering
no
food.
stress.
Yeah,
I've done a
exactly.
million podcast episodes from like weird spaces, closets, bathrooms, you name it.
Yeah.
I've recorded there.
That's awesome.